Oh, I didn't know the other one was about it. It's just unpleasantly overrated.
That's like great. Well, like work.
Whether the well, most people do a few just do that. She didn't even hear me, did she?
No, what is that?
They didn't put down the bar, and I said, well, no one needs one.
They should have. Be careful, I have spitball.
This episode is other close.
Oh, Manny, hey, how are you? Hello, Central. Hello, Central.
Hi guys. Hello. Good. Thanks for coming. Hey. Yeah, Dan Sullivan. Not yet. We got visitors. Okay, well, we're working hard on it. Yeah. Good to meet you again, man. Nice to see you. You guys probably know this lady.
Yeah, someone was self-raised.
Hey.
Hey, why, Mr. Sullivan?
She's in charge. This is perfect. Yeah.
You can shit, you got my food.
Hey, Dan Sullivan. It's Earl. Nice to see you. Dan, how's it going? I love it. Hey, Dan. Marty. Nice to see you. All right. Well, I was going to say a few words, but I'm more in the listening mode. If that's okay. You guys know Magdalene, right?
Always.
So that's the first announcement from my perspective of being in Nome, having my secret weapon here for this community. So I'm really, really pleased that she's part of the Sullivan for U.S. Senate campaign. She is going to be heading up our whole rural native outreach and is a senior advisor to me. So since she's a hometown girl, I was just going to. She's already done great work for Senator Murkowski and for the state of Alaska. But I was just going to say a few words, and then really, and in these kind of meetings, I love to take notes and listen, hear what the concerns are. But I just want to thank you guys for all coming out. We're going to be doing retail campaigning all day today in Nome, and tonight we have a meet and greet at the Airport Pizza. So if you want to spread the word on getting folks out, hearing what we have to say. But I'll tell you this, we are very, very focused on a huge presence in the rural communities. I'm going to be going to costume tomorrow. Some of you might know my wife's family has very deep roots in the interior. My mother-in-law, Mary Jane Tate, you might know her. She's a first woman co-chair of AFN. She's from Rampart. So we're going to be all over the state, and Megan is going to be leading the charge. So I also wanted to say it's great to be back in Nome. DNR commissioner, try to get out here on a pretty regular basis. We're going to go see Denise and a bunch of the other leaders in the community. But it's always been, in my view, and what I'm going to be trying to focus on with regard to the Senate race, and hopefully as your U.S. Senator, is to do the balance of what we need out here, which is a federal government that's a partner and opportunity, not an obstacle. And in my view, throughout the state, the federal government has been way too much of an obstacle, not a partner. And you know, the whole reason I threw my hat in the ring for this election is because I think our country's been fundamentally going in the wrong direction in a whole host of areas, whether it's debt, $70 billion of debt, tax, which is, you know, a number which is unbelievable. An economy that can't grow, federal agencies. I was just on the plane with a guy who's out here doing geological engineering, saying that the new rules are just completely, you know, hampering any kind of placer mining activity and development. The rule of law, which seems worse or just violates on a regular basis. The big reason I'm running is because I'm someone who sees tremendous opportunity. And hearing about it, but I think Nome, in many ways, epitomizes that with regard to what's going on in terms of Arctic shipping, both an opportunity, but let's face it, also a challenge. We want to make sure we got marine safety. But that partnership with regard to the federal government on a strategic port out here, I think that's critical. Resource development, I'm certainly someone who is very focused on resource development. And of course, as you do all this, make sure we maintain and enhance strong families and the well-being of our young people. You know, one of the reasons I was out here early on was when I was your Attorney General. I had the opportunity to go out to a lot of the rural communities, listen to what the concerns are, and did work with Governor Cornell to launch the Choose Your Spec campaign to try to bring down our high levels of domestic violence and sexual assault, which in my view is a challenge all of us need to work on, state, local, federal. But it's connected, and I've seen it in my whole career. You have strong communities with opportunity and jobs and hunting rights. You also have less, in my view, instances of some of the big social problems, whether it's alcoholism or domestic violence or suicide. So we're all about opportunity. Unleash the opportunity of our state through a that wants to work with us. So really, I just want to be up here speaking. I want to be the guy who's kind of listening, hearing what the issues are, taking notes. Like I said, I spent a fair amount of time as Attorney General and DNR Commissioner. It's always good to be back in Nome and to see what the bright future holds for us. Of course, I'd be honored by your vote. Just a quick campaign update. I think we got through the primary. That was a strong result. We actually did well in the rural communities in the primary. I'm not going to be here trashing Mark Vegas, but I think I have a very different vision of what the federal government should do, what regulations should be or shouldn't be about. You know, I'm not going to be a guy who passes giant bills I haven't read, like Obamacare, like interest in watching the avalanche of regulations strangling small businesses. And right now the campaign is going very well. Like I said, the primary went well. We've had a couple really good weeks in terms of polling. Poll had me up 6 points today. That's pretty huge. Going after an incumbent Senator. And we're also starting to get real strong endorsements. Some of you may have seen pre-primary, we got ASRC endorsed my campaign, which is very, highly unusual that they got involved in primary or Republican primary for that matter. And then today we just announced, maybe some of you are members, the Support Industry Alliance based in Anchorage. So that's the 500 company, over 30,000 Alaskans group that works with, it's not oil and gas companies or the mining companies, it's support restaurants, service companies. They have not endorsed a candidate in any election, state, local, federal, in over 20 years. And this morning they endorsed me because they think the opportunities in Alaska are great, but they are very, very frustrated with the relationship with the federal government. Incredibly frustrated. And Mark Vegas' tenure. So that was a huge deal, and that'll be making some news, and maybe some of you are members. So, bottom line, we got a great day today. We're going to be going to do a little radio after. If you guys can give me some good advice on that. Going to be going to meet with the mayor, a big veterans group. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps Reserves. I still serve. I'm a commanding officer. It's called a Marine Agriculture Unit. It's like a Marine Recon Battalion. I go off and do my training on Wednesday, so next time you see me, you'll see a nice time. Do that when I turn the campaign off and go do Marine Corps training for 4 days. And so meet with vets, the mayor,
Bering Straits, the sit and stop.
oh, right. Yeah. So and then meet and greet at the airport pizza later tonight. So thanks again. I'm honored to be here. Really appreciate you guys being here. Of course, I'd be honored by your vote. And now I turn to literally, I'll answer some questions or take suggestions, but I also take a lot of notes. Honestly, some of the best ideas I get from the campaign trail over the last 10 months are doing exactly this. It's a great privilege of running for office. Meet with fellow Alaskans, hear what their concerns are, get some good ideas, and don't be surprised if in a debate in the next couple of weeks with Mark Vegas, I'm starting to say something that sounds like a really good idea. Like, hey man, I can't solve that idea. So anyways, thanks again. Really, really glad to be here.
Transportation.
Yes.
We have a very competitive situation. Naturally, the Russian side and virtually for anything over 40 foot draft.
Yep.
And everything that will be coming out of the north is going to be in plus 40 draft. What do you see that could enhance our situation on this side, where we have over-regulation by the federal government, whether it's in the water, out in the hills, mining, and so forth, to increase, to create a better transportation, smoothing the parking system than we have today?
Well, I mean, you guys tell me, but I think it's a critical issue. It's one of these things where, so one of the big things I've been focused so much on in my campaign at the get-go has been this issue of the over-regulation. And I think people, when they hear that sounds kind of boring, why would you? But I can guarantee this is the issue that unites, unfortunately, all Alaskans, Democrats, Republicans, you name it. There's not an Alaskan that has not been touched by this incredible overreach by the federal government that doesn't want to see partnership in terms of opportunity. I'll give you guys two extreme examples. There was an article several months ago, it was in the Wall Street Journal, that talked about, on average now, in the U.S. government, it takes 8 years to permit a bridge. I mean, That's not what made America great. You know, we built the Alcan Highway in 11 months, 8 years. And the reach of this overreach to me is everywhere. We had a company, a mom and pop, literally a husband and wife, embroidery shop that was doing hats for my campaign, Sullivan for U.S. Senate hats. And these guys were looking like they're going to get shut down by OSHA. 2 people doing embroidery from their house. The federal government is on top of that. It's crazy. So from my perspective, what we need to be able to do, A, is convince people, and I don't think it's that hard, on the strategic importance of a major port in this part, not only Alaska, and B, accelerate the building of it. And I guarantee you, I promise you from my heart, who's done it in the state, not perfectly, but certainly focused on it, I will take on that task, especially the task of slashing through the red tape to get things done. And that has been, in my view, the enormous failure of this administration and our page, where that has not been a priority. You pass huge bills, and then the regulations come and happen. And so you guys know, if you're the small business guys, get crushed by it. Small business guys and women. You got to roll that back. And that's been a huge part of where my campaign has been focused. Roll it back. It's a federal overreach and regulatory state that is strangling, whether it's ports for small businesses, placer miners in the interior or near Nome. And it's not a Republican Democrat issue. I guarantee you 80% of Alaskans agree with this, in my experience. That's been campaigning on this matter for almost 11 months now. Now, I would love to hear what you guys think should be kind of the priority in that battle, right? I mean, obviously we need to pick a port, get the feds on board with all of us working together, but we need to accelerate building them, not get mired in red tape and 12-year EISs and everything that just kill us. Yes, sir.
Richard Van Bill, I'm sure it's school education in the winter, in the winter and the summer. And I guess I would be described to me as a member of the loyal opposition, however special. But I'm very much co-development member of the loyal opposition. He's doing what you're doing, but before he has a chance to really do it. That's not for office and do these. People,
I love the fact that we're in a Sullivan
I'm looking at it.
sticker and a Parnell shirt.
And he's a good politician, you notice.
Good.
But along with Leo's comments about it, there's some, I mean, it's such a huge issue. You know, I talk about it all the time with my clients about climate change, and there's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
There's a real mixed bag. And coming where I come from, as far as politics are concerned, my humanistic thing, I saw the coastal management thing sunset, what, 2 years ago? 3 years ago? 3 years ago, we had the heck referendum. Russian Chancellor bring fuel to Nome, escorted by the Navy. So my first comment is, when do you get there? And all charge you?
Of course.
It is to lobby. I know all of these are congressional team Russian act on board on this, and that is more. I think we got Sullivan to protect. But we also, you talk about that 40 miles of the water, and you talk about 3 miles being Russian, and they do what they want, 3 miles being American, we can do what we want. We got big little diving in the middle. We got all of this, not very much left. You know, and when the Coast Guard Navy guy was here just a couple of months ago, and we saw the you know, that they have the routes that they have laid out and kind of moving down the road. I guess my question is, how do you, because you've also got other things using the strait, will use the strait, whales,
Right.
and seals, and walrus.
That's right.
And my friend Kenny from Cheller, who's a, you know, multifaceted and talented guy, but there are real concerns
Yeah.
in that area about subsistence.
Oh, sure.
And all of those things. So I know you don't know the answer, but not to say that you did, it's done.
Right.
You know what you've done. But give me your thoughts on where
Sure.
you look at that.
Well, look, Richard, thanks, and
I voted for the thing, the SB, whatever that one, 21.
SB
So
21.
I
Well,
was going to keep that. No, I voted for, yeah, no big deal. I voted
Good.
I
thought you were gonna say-
Rachel Petzer.
I thought you were going to say you voted for me, so that's even nicer. You don't have to tell me.
I'm sure I did.
Well, look, this is where, again, and I just want to gauge from your guys' perspective, your sense of kind of, you know, optimism, or where you think the challenges are. Like I said, I think the country's going in the wrong direction, but I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't throw my hat in the ring. I'm not a career politician. Never run for office until this primary 3 weeks ago, which we, like I said, had a very strong result. But what I think is actually very encouraging is that when you look around the state, particularly our state, in our management of different resources, and now I'm talking subsistence, I'm talking fisheries and marine mammals and resource development. Are we perfect? No. But do we have a pretty darn good track record, better than almost anyone else, of responsibly developing our resources, whether that's minerals, oil and gas, and shipping, and also protecting our wildlife and species? Yeah, we have a pretty darn good track record. Let me give you one example of how people overlook. Is it Cook Inlet? You know, take a look at the Kenai River. That's one of the, still, I mean, we got some issues with Kings, but a very, very, one of the most world-class fisheries, certainly in America, and there's also oil and gas development, and that's an area that's actually turned around. I'm very optimistic in the South Central in a while. You know, that was a dead basin for hydrocarbons as recently as 3 years ago. Now that's one of the hottest basins, booming jobs, energy production going on in the country. Boy, has that been a job investment ag. But the good news story there is we're able to do both, right? And with our species, with our transportation. So I think we can learn lessons from Alaska. But I'll tell you this, the other thing that as a U.S. Senator I would do, that I have some experience on it, that does trouble me a little bit. You know, the Russians aren't always the kind of model of environmental protection and you know, responsible resource development. Their record in Arctic in terms of resource development, unlike ours, has been pretty darn atrocious. I've spent, you know, one of the things I've done in my career, I was an assistant secretary of state working with President Bush and Condoleezza Rice on global energy, economic, terrorist finance issues, a lot of the national security, a lot of econ issues. I spent some time in Russia and in Kazakhstan and in Azerbaijan, these places that have a lot of oil development. They don't even touch us in terms of our high standards and our desire to enforce them. So we need to make sure they're doing a good job on the other side of the strait, because if they're not, you know, enforcing that can impact us pretty darn dramatically. And that is where a U.S. Senator can play a strong role.
I'm sure that answers it. How do you talk to some of the people, maybe half the people tell about the development of, say, of is it just, you know, well, we have a good record and we're going to stick with what we've done before?
No.
Do we have another, you know, a longer range?
No, and here's the other thing I think is absolutely critical. Why I'm doing this, certainly, and which is why if you look at my career, You know, I spent a ton of time in the borough communities as our commissioner and as attorney general, and I don't think it's happening well with this current administration. The most important thing we need to do on any kind of strategy, national strategy on the Arctic and Arctic shipping, is not start top down. Hey, here's what we're going to do. You guys figure it out in Nome and the small villages. Just start bottom up, right? Let's get our consensus. Let's figure out our local knowledge and then bring that to the FedEx. One of the things that I was really frustrated, I was the lead guy in our commission in the state on Arctic policy with the Obama administration, the state of Alaska. And one of the things that drove me nuts, and I started writing letters and making a real stink, is that we would be invited as the state of Alaska to these meetings with a whole bunch of other groups, environmental groups, you know, a whole bunch. And my view was, and they were called these stakeholder meetings. And my view, and I started saying, look, we're not just another state here. Okay? The state of Alaska, no, we're the sovereign. You're the federal government, we're the state, you're the city, we're the other sovereign entity here. I'm sorry, with all due respect to the environmental, don't put the state of Alaska and Nome on the same level as the Center for Biological Diversity when you're developing this plan. We need to be first among equals here. And as a U.S. Senator, that's what I certainly would do to make sure that happens with regard to the federal government. Some of the things they were doing in terms of Arctic policy and decisions, we were literally the last people to know. And that's not how it's supposed to work. Here, it's not. I would fight that.
So, I mean, we have devices right now. It looks like control the house, and I mean, you may or may not do when it goes to or the minority party. Problem is still there. So, what would be your plan to try to get some of this stuff that you want done in kind of a bipartisan?
Yeah. Well, listen, it's a great question. And part of the reason that this election is so important, in my view, and it's not partisan politics, but I think we have Harry Reid as the Senate Majority Leader right now. From the perspective of the state and the country, we're not going to get a lot of things done. So, you know, this seat could be the seat that tips the balance, right? In terms of a Senate that doesn't have Harry Reid. If we win this seat. And I would say we, because it's a lot, this is more than just about one person, our players, and this is about people state. But let's assume that you're right. Let's assume that the Republicans don't take the majority and still the Democrats in charge. One of the things I'm very proud of my record, both as your Attorney General and being our Commissioner, getting a lot of things worked out through the legislature, designing them, getting them through, but we're very, very bipartisan. Very bipartisan. I mean, you know, state rep here, you know, our state senator Donnie Olson, I work with him super closely on a whole bunch of issues. And I do think on this issue of regulations and permitting reform that the country as a whole is fed up. I know Alaskans are. So I don't think that's again, a Republican or Democratic issue. I think that's an issue as Americans we can make huge progress on. Again, nobody in their right mind, unless they're completely anti-development, thinks that it makes sense in America to take 8 years to permit a bridge. The Kensington mine down southeast, some of you might be familiar with that, big old mine down there. Depending on how you measure it in terms of permitting lawsuits and other things, it took 20 years. 20 years to permit. Come on. Really? There's now almost 400 guys and women working at that mine right now. Great jobs, high-paying jobs. And The only way that happened, the state got involved in a case that had to take it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court to win the ability to open that mine. We should be doing that. I think the vast majority of Alaskans and Americans, regardless of party, would be supportive of that agenda. And I want to be one of the leaders. Yes, sir.
Back to,
Yeah, I would love to say. Thanks.
back to regulations again. The EPA's regulations regarding mining and their redefinition of wetland
Yeah.
is a major encroachment of state rights, as well as private landowner rights. That there doesn't seem to be really any excuse for it, short of being put forth by regulation. It's not really in statute. So that's something that, of course, would help put more mining, more small mines into operation quicker. But there's one other item too that would be a major deal as far as enabling small family-owned mines to operate quicker and flourish with less governmental issues. That is the family farm has an exemption from OSHA regulations. If the small family mine or a mine operated by an LLC, which all miners are members of the LLC, they had a similar exemption from the MSHA regulations, then that would greatly reduce their costs.
Yeah.
And put them, it would be a real jumpstart for the economy once that got found out.
Yeah, see, these are the kind of ideas I did not know that small family farms have a OSHA.
That's my understanding.
Somewhat.
I didn't know.
Sorry, my parents had a farm, beef farm back in Spain. They're exempt from some things, but now regulations that have been exempted up front for years are now kicking in. Now we're getting my family farm back in Pennsylvania, 600 acres beef farm. We're having to file wastewater permits for runoff that goes into our cow ponds. When it's just there, it's a cow pond, is what the cows drink from. We have to monitor that the cows, we have to build a barrier around the stream that feeds into the pond so that too much cow manure would not end up in the pond. That's what we're dealing with. And then there's the wonderful dust regulation too, when we're tilling the fields to make some corn.
This sounds like more of the EPA stuff that's
Right.
written down, so that's a little bit different than OSHA.
But-
That is a regulation,
Right.
you'd be required to follow. That would tie in with rolling back EPA's overreach, which is just getting silly.
Let me give you guys because I think this is a super important issue. And again, it's going to be an issue that distinguishes me from Mark Vegas. Finger on something that is completely non-controversial, the fact of the Constitution and law that a lot of people are forgetting about, which is every regulation that a federal agency promulgates. This is not an issue of any kind of controversy. It has to have a basis in statute. So a federal agency can't just say, hey, you know what, I woke up today, I'm going to go regulate the such and such. They have to have their marching orders from a statutory provision. And what's happening is that nexus to the law is being broken. So one of the things I did, and I'm proud of this, when I was here Attorney General, the EPA came out with clean air regulations, greenhouse gas emissions regs. Under the Clean Air Act, they had the authority, they had it in this Clean Air Act, to regulate greenhouse gas emissions from what they call major stationary sources. So, coal plants and power generation plants. The EPA went and said, we have this authority to do it from small stationary sources. So, restaurants, businesses, small businesses, schools, they claim this authority. When I was your AG, I read the Clean Air Act, looked at these regs, and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. So I sued them with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the state of Alaska U.S. Chamber. That case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And 8 weeks ago, the U.S. Supreme Court decided, and they agreed with us. They said, EPA does not have the authority, and then they based it back on the Constitution. There was an editorial in the newspaper called that decision a constitutional tutorial for Obama, meaning you have to base your regulatory state in the law. And we won it. And I'm proud as your AG to have brought that case. So what can you do as a senator? There's an act right now called the REINS Act. It's already passed the House. It requires federal agencies that promulgate regs that have an impact of, I forgot what the number, like $50 million more nationally. When they issue their regs, to come back to the Congress, present the regs, and the Congress has to approve the regs. That is very, very sensible. It will rein them in, and Harry Reid won't let that bill that's already passed the House come to the Senate floor. So, rubber stamp in this agenda that I think is law. A similar, more detailed statute went to the Senate floor, actually sponsored by the new thing to the EPA. Mark Baggs voted against it, and it didn't pass the U.S. Senate. So again, this is where he and I have a very different vision. I'm going to be someone who is going to be very focused on making sure that our regulatory state is based in law, and the Congress has good oversight, and that's not happening. In my view, that's hurting our economy, hurting small business, hurting job creation, and hurting communities. And we need to change. Yes, sir.
Just a brief sort of statement and question that you can talk to. Railroads hit the West Coast. This nation quit developing its country. The last suffers today from her father is a long line of people who tried to push getting a railroad through to connect with Russia.
Yeah.
Russians were ready to go. We were talking 35 years before we would ever get the paperwork on the way to even consider that. If the oil pipeline that was built going down to Canada, it would need a separate EIA, and so on and so forth. That railroad still sits there with the potential of increasing the cost of transportation from one end to the other by 35%. Yet, big boats control the economies.
Right. Well, look, this is where I need to get more up to speed on the status of where the railroad is, and I'm sure Megan can help me with that. But I'll just make it more general. One of my biggest frustrations, and it relates to kind of the conversation already that we're having, is for whatever reason, federal government, certain groups, in my view, have singled out our great state for the place that we constantly have to battle, and just to get things done that most other states, it's not an issue. Let me give you my biggest frustration. At least when I've been in the cabinet of Governor Palin and Governor Parnell. It is almost impossible to build a road in Alaska. You can build a road in California, Connecticut, Iowa, it doesn't matter, right? A road is a very normal thing and people want to have. Not controversial, people build roads everywhere. You want to build a road in Alaska? You want to build a bridge in Alaska? You want to build a port in Alaska? It seems like everybody's mother in the lower 48 has it interest in stock. Why? We don't care if Connecticut builds more roads or ports. And we need to change that. We need to change that. I'm a very big proponent of allowing our citizens to build infrastructure. Because everybody else gets to do it in the best way to create the future, to create jobs, to create more private sector development. And too long, we have been kind of the poster child where everybody wants to come and say, yeah, you can build a road anywhere you want to report, but no, not in Alaska. Why not in Alaska? Yes, sir.
How do you feel about the National Park Service and federal government deciding local predator control policies?
I'm not a fan of that either.
The National Park Service in general, there's been a
Oh, I know. When I was AG, we had a very big dispute that went over that issue with Nome Island there, where the predator control with regard to the wolf population was very dramatic. We actually went to federal court with that. Again, this is one of these areas where a theme of my campaign is to these key issues starts here, and in some places, some issues ends here. We have a much better sense of these issues. I want a very positive working relationship with the federal government, but I want to kind of bottom up, not top down. And I think right now it's too much top down. What are your thoughts on the predator control right now?
well, National Park Service and DLM in general, like see those managed at the state level and the local level, and maybe can transfer ownership of national parks into state control. They can still call national park, they would be managed at the state level. So the National Park Service would report to more locals where we can access the decision makers a lot easier. It's a lot easier to deal with a situation and a problem when we can walk down the street and knock on your door and say, why are you making this bad decision? You know, we can't play the PC every day that we have a problem.
Do you think they're supportive of that local decision making though, or no? No.
There was an article that just came out last week about them changing a rule where they're talking more about sportsmanship when it comes to predator control. Predator control is not about sportsmanship, it's about eliminating predators so that we can have a more stable population of animals that we rely on for subsistence.
Okay. And you guys probably read about it, but that's another instance. It was in the interior, but you had an instance a couple of years ago, at the end of the time I was Attorney General, where the National Park Service, like the EPA in the interior, has been drawing down. We're just out either on the river or chicken trying to mine, and literally pulling weapons on our citizens. And in the instance of the Yukon, a 75-year-old man on his boat who wouldn't pull over, they made him pull over, cuffed him, threw him in the mud on the Yukon, and charged him criminally. And again, when I was the AG, I jumped into that case saying, what are you doing? You don't have the authority to throw our citizens on the ground and cuff them. National Park Service reps drawing rifles on these guys. I just think, look, I want to work closely with the feds. I think the opportunities in this state are endless. But we also need to fight back in Washington on these issues. And with all due respect, Mark Baggage, who's been voting with Barack Obama 97% of the time last year, is not the guy who's going to take these agencies. And this is not Democrat, Republican. I think the vast majority of Alaskans want more freedom to make our own decisions.
It's my thoughts on you already. I'm going to give you a little bit of a statement and a question. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank you, just as a regular Alaskan, for taking out your ad in rebuttal to Mark Banish's ad. How you guys took it down instantly was a perfect way. You should have been looking at it respectfully. You handled it way the families wanted, and it takes risk too, so doing the right thing
Yeah.
sometimes works. On another side, the being elected means money. You know, it means you're going to get money. And how you're money, you know, I on ways, fighting hard, twitchy, daily caller, every day to get finance. Because we unfortunately can't get hospitals up here. Well, I know, but Gerald won't let me switch the hotel with the ditch, so. Anyway, though, I will say, I browse Google Chrome, and a lot of the ads that come up are anti-Dan Sullivan ads. And I keep Xing them out, saying, you know, inappropriate, I don't want an anti-Dan Sullivan ad. Then it keeps coming back up. What can you do to funnel more money to people out here? I mean, sorry, we rely more on the internet for news than a lot of other things. So, what can you do to channel a little bit more money into that, or to maybe get better optics on it? So,
Well, I'm really glad you asked the question. Look, one of the things that I've been saying since we went to the primary, but it was even pre-primary, is you know, this is kind of been what I call a tale of two campaigns. And if you look at my ads, and you got to look at kind of ads that campaigns are running. We're talking about, you know, optimistic future, what we're trying to do, big picture issues that I guarantee you will ask you want to hear about. What's your vision? Where do you think the opportunity is? If you have a strong record on a certain issue, you know, highlight it. There's an ad right now that's planned that has a name. Hopefully some of you have seen it. Has this full feature in Anchorage, and this was a settlement that I negotiated. One of the biggest settlements that came out of the Wall Street financial crisis, $500 million against a big Wall Street firm. About negotiation, that settlement went into fund Alaska teachers and first connections. Many of you guys who work in that was a big boost to that. We didn't have to take it from the state legislature. We got out of the hide of a Wall Street firm that I thought did state wrong, and we made it pay. So this is a record, you know. So that's one approach. They do this, I think, because they're told that it works. But if you look at the Vegas campaign and their allies, not only pre-primary, but especially post-primary, every single ad that they have run is a negative one against me. They're not factual, I can tell you that. Please ask me about any of the ads. You know, he's not one of us. He's, you know, you probably, my wife's the last dated when kids are born here. You know, they look at these ads like, these dad are been here 10,000 years. Mark Vegas is I mean, and then this one that kind of blew up in their face where they made an accusation that everybody, the most liberal, the most conservative media in the country said a blatant lie. Drag a family through the mud that didn't want to be in the mud about a fellow murder. I mean, it was just horrible, horrible. And the only reason I even put up an ad was about this, and as soon as the family said, please take it out, of course we did, he did. So I'm mentioning that, not the one, but it just shows you kind of the different direction, right? The next time you see a real negative hit piece on me, please back for I'm not against hunting and fishing rights, right? I hunt and fish. But they, you know, you throw out an ad that has a lie and then put $1 million behind it. It can have an impact. Or you go all over the internet. And I think it's a really good point that you make. Prior to the primary, Mark Vegas had this super PAC. It was almost 100% funded by what's called the Harry Reid's, that's percent majority PAC. Go look at who funds that. That is the most anti-Alaskan, anti-energy, anti-infrastructure, anti-Second Amendment Americans in the country. They spent $5 million pre-primary backing me. No, I kind of choked out there, you must have looked at because that was an investment that clearly didn't work because they wanted me to lose the primary. And it didn't. But the broader message, O'Brien, is that keep an eye out on where people are trying to go with this. I'm putting out a record, I'm putting out positive vision where we want to go. These guys are negative dirt, and it's a little frustrating. I think most of that, I guarantee you, since that last ad, most Alaskans are saying, we are so sick of this. And even Democrats are coming over and saying, we're joining the Sullivan team because you're not doing this stuff. We are not doing this stuff. They are. We are. Yes, Megan.
Yeah, before we go to Tim, I don't know if you'd all introduce yourself, but we've got Joe Brown here, who's the great sister. If we can, in the last
Yeah, that's a great idea. Sorry.
Figure, part of this is so that we can hear your concerns with the community and the region and the business concerns. So that we have a great understanding and really heard from Joe. Connect with them.
Yeah, you know what? I think that would be not only really good, but sometimes I get these modes and I talk to them where we went around the room, not only what your businesses are, but what your big issues are, is it good, bad, or otherwise.
Joe, you know that our signal will be powerful.
Getting all kinds of levels. Yeah, so, Gerald Brown, Vice President, Bering Street State City Council, Nome Chamber of Commerce, etc. But I guess one of the biggest issues that Bering Street has right now is work plans. I'm sure you can, talk with Gail and others about that. So I don't know how much interest there is in the rest of the program about that. There is some competing interest between the city and Bering Straits on, should it be a port clearance or Nome issue. I think that's been resolved. I think everybody pretty much agrees that you need a combination of facilities. You got all the onshore infrastructure here in Nome, because you don't have a deep port. You got a deep port and port clearance and airstrip. So, the combination of both of those is good. You probably know that there's a bill in front of Congress right now, testimony's going on this week, to transfer port clearance for Point Spencer to Bering Straits with a portion of it going to the state and a portion being retained by the Coast Guard. And I'm kind of curious, since you've been on the state side of things for a while, what your opinion is on the competing proposal between state and Bering Straits. Other things that I'm personally interested in is the law of the sea treaty. To address that maybe.
Sure.
I was also curious what your opinion was on carbon line.
Yeah.
That wasn't my question.
Oh, well, we'll let her ask that.
So, Daryl, let me, if I can clarify kind of what you just said. So is the city in Bering Straits pretty much, you guys have a unified position now then? Because last time I was out here, I don't think it was that close.
Right. The city definitely is wanting to continue development of port. And at Bering Straits, we agree that that's a good idea. To some extent. I mean, it doesn't make sense to go all the way up to where you got minus 40, even minus 35. I mean, the hundreds of millions of dollars of that cost, I think, could be better spent than port clearance. But we've had meetings with the mayor and others in the city. Like I said, I've got full hats. So a dual facility concept makes sense. Or Clarence can be developed as in the private sector, even, with the well companies and all of that, and it's naturally water. But we still need to develop a little more. So we need both.
Yeah.
We need both.
Well, I'll tell you, I haven't seen the bill. As a matter of fact, Ed Fogel, the deputy NR commissioner, was on an airplane coming from Anchorage this morning, so I chatted with him briefly on, hey, where are we, right? What's the latest on this? Because hopefully she's told you this, but I work with Gail pretty closely on this issue when I was in our commissioner, and I think, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think she probably would say that very constructive and kind of moving the ball forward. Since I left, I don't know if that's necessarily been the case.
She was not as happy that you
Yeah.
that decision.
So my view is that the reason I asked about the port or the city is because, I work with the mayor, I think you'll see here in like an hour, on this issue too, just to get there right. My view is that the best way to deal with something like this, which, by the way, as a senator, I would be absolutely positively a bulldog in making the case for the importance of the strategic importance, not only Alaska, but for the United States, of the port, period. No doubt. For all those reasons that you guys all know. The more difficult thing, I think, that it would be better to have is if there was kind of a consensus or unanimity between the key players as this moves forward in Congress. And who are those key players? It's obviously you guys, with both hands. Oh, seriously. City and Bering Strait. But also the Coast Guard. But it sounds like they're coming along as far as I can tell. And importantly, the state. Because then that's the kind of bill that I think gets through the Congress a lot more quickly than if you have what I'm hearing might happen tomorrow. Is the state might not be testifying in favor of it. I'm not sure what's going to happen. But if the state's out there saying, I don't think so, I think that just makes it harder to pass the legislation. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah. The Salmon Lake legislation from a few years ago was a classic example of how it can work.
How to do it right.
Right. In the state, the BLM and Bering Strait had a tri-party agreement. It still took 10 or 12 years to get to Congress.
Way too long.
And I think it was the House of Representatives that passed it unanimously, but it didn't go to the Senate in the same legislative session for 2-year deal.
Yeah.
So they had to start all over again.
Yeah. Then I have a nice letter, beautiful.
I was actually in your office.
Did you see where we hung that?
Right.
It's like right when you walk in the DNR commissioner's office.
Right.
Gorgeous. We got from Bering Strait because of the work that we all did on that together. So to me, that's a great example of how to do it. The fact that it took 12 years to accomplish this. But that the state and everybody came together. I'm hoping that that's happening. That was my goal when I was working with folks when I was a DNR commissioner to make that happen.
I think since you left, it's been split farther apart.
On what issue?
The amount of land that the state wants. So not only their runway design looks more like city of Nome runway. develop safety areas and the wide aprons and all those support facilities and all that kind of thing. So it increased probably 600 or 700% from what the proposal was back when we were talking.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the big difference. Since you left, it just kind of kicked it.
I'm sorry to hear that. Oh, geez, okay. Well, let me, just to put a final, note on that, I do think that an important role for a U.S. Senator from Alaska is to help with that kind of consensus between key players, including the state. And because if the state's fighting, things go to Congress and the Senator or the House has to, or the Senate has to choose between this interest and the state of Alaska.
Right.
And, I'm not here to, on certain issues, Mark Bay has been the guy trying to drive a wedge between the state and other. That's not how you get things done. It just isn't. I've seen it, especially on a lot of native Alaska issues, law enforcement, where we got to come together, not drive wedges and then call each other names. It's just not how I would operate. So, yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. Do you think there's been progress there, or is this hearing going to go well?
I don't know, and I'm not on the front lines there. I know the Matt and Bill are back in DC right now. So they are going to present it at their gallows. Support.
Okay.
Here's what you said. One of the things that I think a lot of politicians say now, it goes to committee. And it goes to bringing people together. And they grow a lot. And that is, Ted Stevens, and I didn't know he saw that perhaps one of the greatest resources, if not the greatest resource of our state, our state of resources, is our geography. Where we are. It's where we need to keep looking to the north, if that's where it's happening. Having said that, there's this, the ads, right? And it had Mark Begic, Tony Knowles, and a different ad with Murkowski, with Lisa Murkowski, and they were on board together for the defeat the SB 21 guy. Hello, Central. And I guess maybe if you were talking, this may sound like I'm opting out with the easy way, but to have a senator Republican, to have a senator Democrat, allows us to have a voice, a strong voice in both camps. You have two Republicans, the Democrats are going to ignore you. We had that. It worked because we also gained a lot of enemies. And we're still, there's a lot of, Is there any sense in what I'm saying? Maybe you had to
Well, I think it's a.
Sorry to interrupt. I do want to get Mark's question before we go, but just having had to work alongside Mark Begic, being in Lisa's office, the level of broken promises that he makes on the Democratic side is not going to help us here in rural Alaska, and that's why I decided to join Dan Sullivan's campaign, because I can't live with another 6 years of Mark Begic and the way he makes broken promises to our leaders in Alaska. So having a senator on both sides, yes, that's helpful, but not when the other senator's not doing his job and being a strong advocate.
Well, and I'll make another, and then I will answer the other question. And then I think I got it right. There's just a very different philosophical difference right now that I don't think most Alaskans agree with. If you look at Mark Begic gets reelected, his first vote will be to re-elect Harry Reid as the senator. Period. That's what he's going to do. Got a ton of money from Harry Reid. Mark Vegas put over 220 bills. 220 bills that he's put forward with his name as an author for the bill. One that's gotten through the Congress, and that was to name a federal office. That's a fact. Ted Stevens' first term in the U.S. Senate, 16 major pieces of legislation that he authored became law. Lisa Murkowski's, 6. Okay? Mark Vegas, 1, and with the name of that office. And he's in the Senate majority. He's part of Harry Reid's leadership team, for goodness sakes. Why is that? Because the policies of Harry Reid, which controls what comes on the floor, are not pro-Alaska. Harry Reid has said he will never compromise on opening the animal. An issue that 75% of Alaskans agree we need to do. The roads issues, the ports issues, they're not pro-development up here, responsible development. And so, Mark Vegas might talk a big game on being on the other side, and Lisa's team, trust me, Lisa's not talking about their great team. But I think he's with a leader in the U.S. Senate who wants to consolidate more power in Washington and not do what I think most Alaskans want to do. And let me relay Heather.
Actually, because I know that was going to come out anyway.
Sure.
One of the Nome Chamber of Commerce priority for the last couple of years has been that bypass mail has been brought up many times over and over again, and I just want to make sure that you are in the approval of keeping our bypass mail.
I am. On Pebble kind of goes to this broader issue I was just talking about. I've said from the get-go, we're not going to trade one resource for another. We have an amazing, the most productive salmon fishery in the world in that part of the state. But as it relates to the federal government, Mark Vegas joined and agreed with the EPA that the EPA should have a preemptive veto over a project they have not seen yet. It hasn't been filed. It looks like they're firming. It looks like it's not going anywhere fast, that's for sure. Under the Clean Water Act, they're claiming the authority to preemptively veto state of Alaska projects on state of Alaska land. I think, and I've said this my whole career, AG, DNR candidate, whether you can't stand the idea of a line. As an Alaskan, the notion that the EPA is supposed to preemptive veto authority over projects in Alaska, on Alaska land that they haven't seen, should scare every Alaskan, because they could use that for a fish processing plant in Nome, they could use it for mining, they could use it for oil and gas on the North Slope, and he agreed with that. I was stunned that he would agree with that, because the precedent is terrible for our state. And there's all kinds of rumors why he agreed with that. One was purely fundraising. He wasn't doing well in fundraising. He needed outside environmental groups to help him with his fundraising, so he took this very radical. So I'm against the EPA, but I'm for the ability of a company to go through the process, to go through the permitting process, right? But when I met with the leadership of that company, and I said, look, if you go through the process, because they had to file an application, you have to go through state and federal. I said, we have the highest standards in the world, right? You got to meet them. And if you can't meet them, you're not going to have the project approved. Period. I met with the head of Anglo-American, told her to do that. Now, it looks like that's not going to happen anytime soon. But to me, we got to maintain the high standards. We should never, for example, we can't have, this, project that recently, the problem we've had in Canada, I can believe about it, the Mali, mine. So there was a structural engineering, we should never, ever in a million years, permit allow a project like that. Evidently, they're not looking at cutting corners and everything. But I disagree that the EPA should be able to preemptively veto projects. And we've got to maintain our high standards. I don't agree with creating money resource for the. Listen, might be. Guys, I want to thank you guys again. Just for coming up, for being here. Of course, I'm honored by your vote. More importantly, tonight, if you want to come by Airport Pizza, we'll be doing a meet and greet at 7:30. And again, it'd be a great opportunity if you feel to chat more one-on-one with folks and hear what your issues are. But I can tell you this. As your U.S. Senator, my door is always going to be open. And working together kind of on ground-up solutions to make things happen and move things forward is going to be my highest priority. So, thanks again for coming out. Okay.
These guys are not.
You can go out that door. Yeah.
Thanks for coming, Brian. Of course. 25. Well,
Yeah.